各位同事，咁就
Good afternoon, members who have attained the quorum. This is Subcommittee to examine the implementation in Hong Kong of resolutions of the UN Security Council in relation to sanctions. Tabled before you is the agenda with all the items there. First off, the membership. 3 members have written in to signify their membership, or late membership rather, Mr. Hon CHU, Dr Priscilla LEUNG, Mr. Alvin YEUNG, and Mr. Hon CHU wrote in on the 11th of December. He also gave us supplementary information. Any question? Mr. Dennis Kwok, please be seated. Right, let's get Mr. Hon CHU's application out of the way first. In accordance with the House rules, if members are out of town or indisposed when they're invited to join, then it would be up to the subcommittee to decide whether to accept the late application. We've seen the letter by Mr. Hon CHU. Right, Mr. Chu, is there anything you'd like to draw our attention to? 2 minutes, please. Chairman, thank you. Well, nothing much to add in addition to what's in the letter. Right. Any questions for Mr. Hon CHU? Mr. or Dr. Martin now. Make it brief, please. I don't have any question, but I've read Mr. Chu's letter as the one dated the 2nd of May 2019. There are a couple of questions arising from that. This subcommittee is not a subcommittee on international relations. Our terms of reference is in fact pretty narrow. We are basically considering whether, in accordance with the UN resolution, endorse the regulation to implement the UN resolutions. As regards the implementation of the UN resolution, this falls outside the remit of this subcommittee. It should be within the purview of the security panel. So in that sense, I feel that Mr. Chu doesn't seem to understand the operation of this subcommittee. I do think I can support the application. Mr. Hon Chow. Chairman, I've heard Dr. Martinel's remarks. Basically, we have to get the facts straight. And all these UN sanctions, we respect the resolutions. Chairman, we've seen so many resolutions by the UN, and they will be implemented as a result of the rectification. We have a limited role here, and we must bear in mind that these are UN resolutions. I'm not sure whether Mr. Chu is trying to look at issues like the US and so on. I go along with Mr. or Dr. Martinel that Mr. Chu may not be fully aware of the terms of reference of this subcommittee. I don't think we should have Mr. Chu on this committee if he doesn't understand the terms of reference of this committee. I agree with Dr. Martinel. Well, shall we put it to the vote? Those who would like to admit Mr. Chu. Those against Mr. Chu's application. Mr. Chu, well, in fact, you're welcome to sit in on the meeting. You're welcome to sit in on the proceedings of the meeting. If you wish to put questions, I would allow you to do so, but you have to keep your questions within the confines of the terms of reference. And Mr. Alvin YEUNG and Dr. Priscilla LEUNG also wrote in. Dr. Priscilla LEUNG wrote in on the 14th of February, and Mr. YEUNG wrote in on the 5th of March. In order to be consistent with my handling of the meeting, I think we should invite Dr. Leung and Mr. Yeung to submit their views in writing, explaining why they would be keen to join this subcommittee. And I will leave these two applications till the next meeting. All right? Okay, then let's move on to the agenda proper. Shall we invite the administration in, please?
Hi, 各位午安，各位。
Good afternoon. I don't propose to introduce the officials one by one. We have the same team of officials every time we meet for the subcommittee. There are 7 legal notices altogether. We're here till 4:30 in this conference room, and beyond that we cannot use it anymore. So I think we have to get on with business as soon as possible. The first one to deal with is the UN Sanction Mali Regulation 2018. We will stick with the English version, because after all this is a UN resolution, so we stick with the English version. So please, this 286 notice, there are 5 regulations and 2 repeal regulations. These are for updating. We did have these sanctions before, but they have lapsed, and in accordance with the UN arrangement and the MFA instruction, we're updating the sanction. The first one is the UN Sanction Mali Regulation. This is a North African inland country. Since 2011, we have seen armed conflicts, and they have signed a peace treaty, but the armed groups flouted the peace treaty in 2017 September 5th. They endorsed the 237 resolution and impose a travel ban for 1 year and also financial sanctions. In the light of the situation in Mali continuing to constitute a threat to international peace and security, 2432 resolution was endorsed to extend the sanction until 31st of August 2019. We have received instruction from the MFA to implement the UNSC 2432 resolution. We have set up this regulation. This will come to an end on the 31st of August 2019, and this is the 124th as a trading partner since the UN sanction has nothing to do with the trade of goods, and there is no implications on the trade of goods. I defer to Madam Law to brief members on the details of the regulation. Will members please refer to Appendix C or Annex C. Let's have a look at the first one. We have looked at so many regulations before. Are they similar to them? Why do you make all these changes? In terms of drafting, there are some changes, although the details, the content remain pretty much the same. We've seen South Sudan and also the two terrorist groups. The drafting format is actually similar to that, so members must have seen this format before. Right, on the first page, economic assets is added to the interpretation, and in clauses 2 and 4 there is a mention of the economic assets that would make it easier to understand. And page 2, Hong Kong person is added. In the subsequent clauses, there are references to Hong Kong person. For simplicity's sake, we've also added this definition in the interpretation. Relevant entity. This is similar to previous regulations. Now, the way we publish the name in the list is different. And I'm going to refer to these in the subsequent clauses. For the rest, it's just a matter of textual differences, and the name list is also different. Page 3 refers to secretary, because the list is published by the Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development. So we have this in interpretation. Security Council, we make it simpler in the Chinese version. Page 4, Part 2. Economic assets prohibited. Bracket 1B. We have Hong Kong person in the interpretation, so we can delete all these details. In terms of drafting, Hong Kong becomes an adjective. HKSAR is a noun. So is this the way it is drafted throughout? HKSAR or Hong Kong, is it used as an adjective to qualify a person or company? And HKSAR is a place. That's part 2, 1A and B. Hong Kong and HKSAR, they appear intermittently throughout the page. Well, if you refer to a place, we stick with HKSAR, but for persons, we use Hong Kong person. Right, thanks for your confirmation. Please carry on. Number 2, these are drafting changes. Some of the words have been moved around because of the changes to the interpretation. We can simplify the drafting. Page 5 and number 3, we've moved what's in number 7 to here. We make it simpler. Basically, if a person does the act in a place outside Hong Kong with permission granted in accordance with a law enforced in a place, then it doesn't contravene this provision. Further along, again, textual changes without any changes to the meaning. Page number 6, clause 3, bracket 2, we've added certain scenarios. This is moving number 4 from the next page to here, and page 7, clause 4 has been deleted. Page 8, licenses.
So this is just textual changes, and we are using some short forms or abbreviations. And page 9 is the same. Page 10 the same. I want to ask about page 9. Section 3, you added this. However, if the chief executive determines that. And previously, you didn't have this phrase. So who made the decision? Oh, I see now you have deleted it if the chief executive determines that. Right. Page 10, section 5, provision of false or misleading information. We have added the words or misleading because we have taken reference from other Hong Kong laws. When false information is mentioned, they would also add the word or misleading. Well, for page 10, for the drafting, how come all the paragraphs start with the phrase also if the chief executive determines that? Now you are trying to simplify the drafts, but why are you making it more complicated? Or you just not want to mislead people? Can you tell me why you are writing like this? Who can answer this question? Mr. Lee? Well, for the old version, you can see it under bracket 3 if the chief executive determines that, and then A, B, C, D. We are now separating A, B, C, D, and they all become independent. So this is to clarify the relation among these paragraphs, and they can be interpreted independently. Page 12. Section 7 is deleted because it's moved to bracket 3. Page 13, evidence. We have added two terms under interpretation, that is premises and seized property, so that they do not have to be repeated all the time afterwards. And for section 7, it's just they are just textual changes. The meaning has not changed. Page 4 is the same. Section 8. We have a definition of seizing property. The meaning has not changed. Page 16 and 17, these are also drafting, fine-tuning. Page 7, the same. Page 18, the same. Page 19, we've deleted section 5 because the sanction list is not to be appointed by the CE, but by the Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development, and he will put it on the website. At the last meeting, we already told members about this new approach. So for this drafting, is the same as that of last time, right? Yes. Please continue. Page 20, nothing particular. Page 21, we've added the powers of secretary, and he can delegate such powers to his staff. Page 22, duration. It will expire at midnight on the 31st of August 2019. For this duration, is it like a 6-month term or 12-month term? Normally it's 1 year. We will follow the date determined by the United Nations Security Council. Any questions? Mr. Adiju, if you ask general questions, can you ask at the end of the meeting? Because now you have to ask questions about Mali. I want to ask a question about the wording. For this amendment, we have added the definition of Hong Kong person, but I would like to ask about T21B1. Why does it say both a Hong Kong permanent resident and a Chinese national? Has the UN asked for this? That is, you have to be a Hong Kong permanent resident, and at the same time you have to be a Chinese national. Well, for the UN Security Council's requirement is about its member states and it's about its nationals. We are doing this in accordance with the instructions from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the PRC. So the person must be a Hong Kong permanent resident and a Chinese citizen. Okay, understood. Let's move on to the next regulation. Well, for this regulation is to target Democratic Republic of the Congo. Congo is in the middle of Africa. Ever since 1996, there have been a lot of conflicts and wars. And in 2003, a peace treaty was signed, and then the war stopped. Although there was a ceasefire, however, different parties were still involved in conflicts. And one resolution was decided on by the United Nations, and there have been various bans, including travel ban and financial sanctions. And in June 2018, another resolution was passed. It is about the travel ban and financial sanctions and arms embargo against Congo. And we have received instructions from the MFA to implement sanctions decided by the UNSC. So in accordance with that, we are now enacting this regulation. In 2017, well, Congo is the 112th trade partners of Hong Kong, and its trade volume with Hong Kong is about $300 million. The UNSC's sanction would not undermine the trading between Hong Kong and Congo, because the resolutions are not about those. So in terms of drafting, we will be using new ways of writing. So for most of the amendments, they are about textual changes, and they would not affect the actual sanctions. Ms. Long, members, please refer to Annex F, Section 1. We've added the definition of arms or related material. Is this the definition of the UN arms or related material? Yes, we are following the UN's way of drafting. For assistance, because for the following sanctions, we will be talking about assistance, so we are having definition here. Page 2, committee. It means the Committee of the Security Council established under paragraph 8 of Resolution 1533. And economic access, we are giving it a definition here so we do not have to repeat later. And for Hong Kong persons, the same as in the previous regulation. License, we make it simpler. It means a license granted under Part 3. Mode of transport. So we want to include ship, aircraft, and vehicle here. It will make the following sanctions simpler. As for operator, in relation to a mode of transport, person in DRC, later on there are sections about this, so we want to give it a definition here. Do you put this together, or you're following the UN's requirements? For UN, it requires us not to make certain things available to persons in DRC. But what is the definition's wording? Is it the exact wording? Yes. Now for the Chinese version, you mean a person physically present in Congo. So for the English version and the Chinese version, I don't think they are really the same. DOJ, do you have any other information to provide us? This person in DRC, you say he means a person operating in the territory of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So for the Chinese version, it's just a person that's physically in Congo. Chairman, please turn on Ms. Ng's microphone. For the Chinese person 身處香港人士, it's just a label. So you have to look at the definition. It means a person operating in the territory of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So this is the real meaning of 身處香港國人士. However, for the Chinese, translation is not stipulated by UN, right? No. So how does the PLC have a translation of that? Well, in the Chinese version, we have also made such a definition. That's the same. It's like a person operating in the territory of Congo. For MFA, it gets a UN resolution, right? So they must have a Chinese version. So person in DRC, do they really translate it into 身處剛果人士? I'm talking about the Chinese version of the UN resolution. When it's handed over to PLC, there must be a Chinese version, right? There are 5 official languages at UN. There must be a Chinese version, right? If you cannot answer this question, please provide the relevant information to us later. Let's not dwell on this if you can't answer it right now. Well, we'll have to take time to look at the resolution. Please continue. Well, for relevant entity and relevant person, because the way of publishing the list is different, so the definitions are revised. Page 4. For the obsolete resolutions, now they are deleted. For responsible person, these are the responsible persons of 3 modes of transport. For Secretary and Security Council, we've seen these definitions in the previous regulation. As for supply, we make it simpler because we do not have to repeat supply, sale, and transfer all the time. Page 5. So according to the interpretation, now there are some short forms, so we would make the sections simpler. Now for person in DRC, you can see it here. And page 6, A and B's order are now changed. And for the remaining parts, just drafting improvements. Section 3, carriage of goods prohibited. So these are just some drafting, fine-tuning. The meaning has not changed. Page 7. All these drafting changes, the meanings have not changed. For example, the responsible persons that I mentioned earlier, we've already given it a definition. Pages 8 and 9, the changes are drafting simplifications. Page 10, the same. And section 5, making available dealing with economic assets prohibited. Just some drafting changes. Page 11, the same. Page 12, in the upper part, we are matching the defense to the offenses concerned. And section 6, entry or transit of persons prohibited. For the deleted words, they are moved to page 14, so there are just changes of order. For 7A, it seems that we've added something, but we are just moving E to A. Bracket 3, 4, 5, we are just moving them here. As for the lower part of page 14, section 7, originally it was Section 12, and now it becomes Section 7.
15頁
Page 15, licenses. All these changes are just drafting changes. We have some acronym there, and some of the orders have been tidied up. 16, 17, all the same. Pages 18, 19, same. Page 20, as in the previous regulation, other than false, we've added misleading information. For the rest, they are drafting changes. Page 21, clause 12 has been moved to clause 7. Page 22, part 4. The way it was drafted, ship, aircraft, and vehicle and investigation, we had 3 different parts to them. We now combine all these transport vehicles, combine them into one single part. So 12, 13, 14, they are pre-existing clauses. We were just consolidating them. And pages 23, 24, 25, they are treated in the same way. We're combining the 3 different modes of transport. And 24, board and detain certain modes of transport. And starting from 27, because of the combination, we can delete all the redundant parts. 31, clause 19, some drafting changes. Page 32, it is similar to what we've seen just now in relation to evidence. We've added premises, seized property. The 2 definitions are added, similar to the previous regulation. 21, 22, some textual changes. Page 35, some minor drafting changes. Page 36, we swap A and B around. Page 37 and 38, drafting changes. Page 39, about the publication of a list of individuals and entities by Secretary. These will be uploaded on the web, and similar in wording to the previous regulation. Thank you very much. Legal Advisor, any questions? And any questions from members regarding the DRC regulation? If not, I shall invite another legal advisor to help us with the rest of the regulations.
Hảo,唔該晒.
Thank you very much. Deputy Secretary, the next regulation, please. Chairman, thank you. This one, we're dealing with 2 regulations. One is a new regulation. The other one is a repeal regulation to do with Libya. Libya is a country in northern Africa, and in 2011, there was the conflict involving Gaddafi, and in 2011, the sanctions were imposed on travel ban and so on in order to tackle the illegal export of petroleum. The vessels exporting petroleum will be banned, and all these measures will be have been extended on 11th of November. 2441 resolution was endorsed to extend the sanction to 2020. We have received instruction from the MFA to implement 2441 resolution, like we said a moment ago, in order to make the regulation more easily readable. We have looked at the regulation and implement all these sanctions, and we have also repealed the original regulation. In 2017, Hong Kong ranks 137th as a trading partner, and the trading volume is $160 million. And it has nothing to do with ammunition and weapons, and the sanction will not affect the trade between the two places. Again, I'd like to invite Madam Law to brief you on the details. Will members please refer to Annex E. Assistance, we have added this in the interpretation. Page 2, connected person. This is moved from page 4. It was a person connected with Libya in the past. Now we call this a connected person. Designated funds moved over from page 22. Economic assets. We've seen this in the previous regulations. Over to page 3, Hong Kong person. It is the same. License. We have simplified the definition there. Page 4, mode of transport. We've seen this before in previous regulations. Operator refers to the mode of transport without mentioning the 3 modes specifically. Person connected with Libya has been moved to page 2, and we have some punctuation changes. Page 5, relevant entity and relevant person. That's because of the changes to the publication of the list, and hence these changes. Page 6, responsible person for the 3 modes of transport. We have the definition there. Secretary, same as in previous regulations. Specified services. This is moved from page 26, clause 23. The details are the same. Page 7, supply. We have given the definition there. We've seen this before. Turning to page 8, part 2. All the changes are simplification of the references. Clause 2, clause 3, some drafting changes. Moving along to clause 4. In clause 4, we made it clear when this will lapse in accordance with the timing of the resolution. All these, the rest are drafting changes. Page 15, some drafting amendments. The content is the same. Pages 16 and 17, they are the same. Pages 18 and 19, again some drafting changes. Pages 20, 21, page 21, clause 5, the defenses correspond with the offenses under the subsections. Page 22, again some drafting changes. Designated funds, the definition has been moved to the first clause. Clause number 10, again some drafting revisions. Page 24, clause 12.2, we've added something there. In fact, this is this is clause 9 on the next page. And page 26, some drafting changes. Specified services at the bottom, this has been moved to clause number 1. Page 27, again some changes in terms of drafting. Page 28, same. Page 29, clause 17. We're moving this from page 39. Starting from page 30, it is about licenses, and these are the drafting changes, and some acronyms are used. Pages 31, 32, and 33. And page 34, persons are changed to individual because we are talking about a natural person. Individual would convey the meaning more specifically. A person can be in a company in some cases. And page 35, some minor textual changes. Page 36 also. Page 37 also. Page 37, 22, after false information, we've added misleading information, the same treatment as we've seen in the previous regulations. Page 38, some recasting of the order. Page 39, this has been deleted because it's been moved to the preceding paragraphs. Page 40, enforcement. This is the same as the previous regulations. Instead of referring to the 3 modes of transport, we're combining them into one single reference. The following pages, starting from page 40, are the result of the combination. The meaning has not been changed. So because of the combination from starting from page 45, we can delete all the references. And page 50, some textual changes. Page 51, evidence. As members can see, and these are the same as the previous regulations. And we have some minor, simple textual changes as a result. Pages 52, 53 are the result of that. Pages 54, 55, some touching up. And page 56 also, page 57, some fine-tuning of the wording. The same can be said about 59. Page 60, same. Page 61, publication of the list of individuals and entities by Secretary. And for the rest, they are minor textual changes. Page 62 are the same as the previous regulations. Pages 62 and 63 are fine-tuned in response to the publication of the list. All right, thank you very much. Legal advisor, any question? Thank you. Legal advisor. Chairman, I've got a question. A marked up copy, page 35, subsection 5. A moment ago, in 286 resolution regarding Mali, the wording was changed to determines. Now it is changed to is satisfied. So my question is there any difference in terms of meaning, or is it just a further revision on the basis of the previous one? Who's going to take the question, please? Madam Ng? Right. Libya came after Congo, or the DRC, so there's an improvement in terms of drafting.
That is, your drafting department thinks that as
an improvement, right? So, legal advisor, do you have any other questions? Mr. Holden Chow, do you have questions? No? If members have no questions, then let's move on to the next regulation. Secretary, thank you. We are talking about 3 regulations together. Well, they are all under UNSC resolution UNSC. Let me talk about Somalia. Somalia is a country in Eastern Africa. In 1991, Bahrain was overthrown and the country was thrown into chaos. So from 1992 onwards, there have been sanctions on Somalia. And then according to the Djibouti Agreement reached in 2008, the Transitional Federal Government of Somalia and the Opposition Alliance for the Liberation of Somalia agreed to end their conflicts and to establish a unity government. Well, to take measures, in order to take measures to help humanitarian assistance, there have been a number of measures, including arms embargo, charcoal ban, and travel ban, financial sanctions, etc. And the other is about Eritrea. Eritrea took military actions against Djibouti and it incited conflicts within Somalia. So UN started sanctioning Eritrea, and those include arms embargo, travel ban, and financial sanctions. And according to the resolution 2444 in 2018, this resolution was passed to target Somalia. And the relevant sanctions were extended to November 2019. At the same time, all the sanctions against Eritrea are lifted. So as we explained earlier, we want to make the regulation clearer. So now we have a new regulation and we are repealing the old regulation concerning Somalia. And for Eritrea, because the UN has already lifted all the sanctions on this country, so we are now enacting the repeal regulation. Well, this is for members' information. What happens in Eritrea so that UN would lift the sanctions? Does it have a very stable government now? According to the UN discussions, they have noticed that Eritrea has now enhanced its connections with Djibouti and Somalia, and also UN wants these countries to establish normal relationships. It is hoped that they can be better neighbors. So the UN decides to lift the sanctions on Eritrea. Ms. Law, you can now start. Yes, members, please refer to Annex F. That is United Nations Sanctions Somalia Regulation 2019, Section 1. We have added the word assistance and its definition. And earlier on in other regulations, you've already seen this. Page 2. Connected persons. Now we will just make it simpler. For designated person, originally you can see A, B, C, D, E. Now we've deleted them. And we are just copying this from Resolution 1844. So to make it simpler, we just say that designated person means a person or entity designated by the committee under Resolution 1844. Economic assets, you've seen that. Page 4, Hong Kong person. We've discussed that. License. You also see this change in other regulations. Mode of transport, the same. It means a ship, aircraft, or vehicle. Operator, the change is the same as in the other regulations. Relevant entity, relevant person. Well, the way of publishing the list is different, so now we've also changed to the terms. And for Resolution 733, we've deleted it because it's no longer related. Page 2, another 2 resolutions are also deleted. Responsible person, we use the same word in other regulations. Secretary, the same. Security Council, the change is the same. Supply also means supply, sale, or transfer. Page 7, Section 2. These are some drafting amendments using shorter forms or abbreviations. Page 8 and 9, some drafting fine-tuning. Page 10, page 7, the same. Page 12 and 13 are the same as well. Page 14. Just to simplify the text. Page 15, Section 6, the same. These provisions are the same as those in the earlier regulations. Page 16, the same. Page 17, Section 7. You can see that we've added bracket 2 is just moved from the later part. Page 18, newly added Section 8. It was originally Section 12. Page 19, Part 3. The wording changes are just for drafting improvements. 21, bracket K. The dates on which the regulation will take effect and expire, and the following 2 pages, some drafting improvement. Page 24, 25. Drafting amendments and the duration of the regulation. Page 26, 27. Page 26, after false, we add or misleading before information. Page 27, simple textual amendments. Page 28, we've deleted Section 12 because we have moved it to the earlier part. Page 29 is the same as other regulations. There are 3 modes of transportation, and we are just putting them together. From Section 13 onwards, we just put all the 3 modes of transport into one. And page 32, we are deleting the repetitions. Page 37 is also about the 3 modes of transport. Page 38, some simple drafting amendments. Page 40, Part 5, evidence. You've seen this drafting before in other regulations. Just we are just using simpler phrases and terms. I have a question. Section 19, bracket 4 on page 38. 19, bracket 4. You have added the Chief Secretary for Administration made by order in writing authors the detention of a ship. So for this power, does they have it for all the regulations? Are there any regulations in which this power is exercised by the CEO or other secretaries? Now, if we have to detain a certain mode of transport, well, the authorized person can detain it for a certain period of time, but if it's longer than that period, then the CS for administration would have to approve that. So if detention of modes of transport is included in the regulation, then the power is the same. So the CS will be authorized. So where does this authorization come from? In our domestic laws, do we have a certain ordinance which would give the CS this power? Is this particular regulation, because it's stated here. So is this regulation, it does not come from other pieces of legislation. Are you sure about that? Mr. Holden Chow. Thank you, Chairman. Maybe I'm too fast, but I've noticed this. For Somalia regulation, Section 28. Here there is a deadline for proceedings, and the arrangement is 12 months. I've read the Libya regulations. So for all these UN sanctions, are they normally using 12 months as the period for proceedings? Well, for Section 28 is about summary offense. And if that person committed that offense outside of Hong Kong, then after he returned to Hong Kong, within 12 months, we have to start the proceedings. If the offense occurs in Hong Kong, there's actually no time limit. So it's only about some summary offense. And if the offense is not committed in Hong Kong, then there's a deadline for proceeding. That is 12 months after return to Hong Kong. Okay, Ms. Low. Please continue. We were at page 38 and 39. So page 40 is part 5. So these are just some simple amendments. For the following pages are the same. Page 46, we've talked about it. Page 47. Relevant person and relevant entity. And the list will be published by the Secretary on the website of the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau. This is the same as other regulations. And under Section 31, exercise of powers of Secretary can delegate the power to his staff. Okay, legal advisor, any questions? Members, questions? Any other questions or any other business? If not, I declare that the meeting be adjourned. No AOB. Thank you.